So the plan this week is to focus on pages 62 to 66 in Rhetorical Analysis, a brief guide for writers. And the terms there include the validity of enthymemes and the strength of enthymemes. So let's look at that quickly. Aristotle's comparison of enthymemes to the formally logical syllogism provides tools for critiquing the ideational content configured by an enthymeme's presentational form. What does that mean? That there is a relationship between the organization of statements and the principles of logic. A leads to B leads to C sort of thing. So let's have a look. Such critique involves two main concerns, that is to say the validity and the strength of enthymemes. To explain, we'll need to take a brief detour into Aristotle. Aristotle thought that syllogisms could be judged in terms of their validity and truth. Validity is a matter of correct logical form. Consider, for example, the following two arguments stated in syllogistic form, which is to say two premises that combine to generate a conclusion. So a syllogism is always in the form of three statements in sequence: premise one, premise two, followed by conclusion. Premise one, Socrates is a man. Premise two, all men are mortal. Therefore, conclusion, Socrates is mortal. Why? Because Socrates is, for those math whizzes out there, a subset of the larger, which is to say, if you like, you could say that if you have a circle drawn, and within that circle, that is the whole of all of the creatures on the planet that are men, and you have a teeny tiny little pinpoint within that circle, that's Socrates. Socrates, being one member of the set as a whole, shares the same properties with that set. If all of the men, everybody in the circle, is mortal, Socrates, being somebody in the circle, is also mortal. And that's the shape of a syllogism. So here's a second one. Socrates is a philosopher, premise one. Premise two, Socrates has a beard. Therefore, all philosophers have beards, conclusion. Well, that's obviously an error. Why? Because we still have that circle that we were talking about. And you started with Socrates is a philosopher. Yes, he is one among, shall we say, a small circle of people who are philosophers. Socrates has a beard. Well, just formally, no. One person in the circle having a beard doesn't mean that they all do. Look at the top one. Again, Socrates is a man, okay? All men are mortals. So, the second statement, premise two, in that first syllogism, that creates a situation where we understand that everybody in the group shares something in common. You could similarly say, Socrates breathes air. All men breathe air. Right? No, wait a minute. I've screwed it up. But anyway, you understand that what's wrong with number two is the form. The form is incorrect because there's no all anyplace, right? There's no circle. There's only the little pinpoint. Okay, so in both cases, the premises are clearly true. Socrates is a man, all men are mortals, Socrates is a philosopher, Socrates has a beard. The premises are all true. However, only the first argument yields a true conclusion. Why? According to Aristotle, the first is in correct syllogistic form, while the second is not. We do not propose to offer a course in logic here, but the problem is the incorrect distribution of the terms in the premises. Which is to say, again, for a syllogism to work, you have to be pointing to a whole group for which something is true, or a universal principle, something that must always be true. When I kick the soccer ball comes down. All the time when people kick soccer balls, the soccer balls always come down. Conclusion, gravity makes soccer balls come down. Something along those lines. Anyway, syllogisms only work if there is some kind of all-encompassing truth somewhere. As Aristotle observed, a formally invalid argument cannot be true, or at least cannot be said to prove its conclusion. However, logical validity does not guarantee truth. The truth of a logically valid syllogism depends on the truth of its premises. Consider this example. The President of the United States is a turtle. All turtles are fish, therefore the President of the United States is a fish. The form is correct. You have one pinpoint, the President of the United States, belonging to the circle, right, of turtles. And you say that all of the turtles are fish, okay? The only conclusion to that is the President of the United States is a fish. So that is valid, right? The form, the structure of the syllogism is valid. But the problem with the argument is, of course, that none of those statements is true. The President of the United States is not a turtle, and turtles are not fish. So the conclusion cannot be true because the premises are not true. This is the fun part, guys. This syllogism is formally identical to the Socrates syllogism presented earlier. It is logically valid, however, its premises are false, and they combine to produce a conclusion that is necessarily also false. Syllogisms, then, can be judged in terms of their validity and of their truth. Similarly, according to Aristotle, enthymemes can be judged in terms of their logical validity and persuasive strength. An enthymeme can be formally invalid, in which case it simply makes no rational sense, but a valid enthymeme can still be judged as more or less persuasive, strong or weak, depending on how strongly an audience embraces or should embrace its premises. Okay, anyway, so you have a sense then that what we're opening with is validity and strength of an argument, whether or not a structure supports a conclusion logically, and also, importantly, whether or not the premises are true as stated. And we have a second topic for these pages, 62 to 66, logical fallacies. Here is a thing that is true. We have many types of logical fallacies, right? If you look over on 65, circular arguments, petitio principii, begging the question, non sequitur, sweeping generalization, faulty analogy, post hoc ergo propter hoc, ad hominem, straw person, red herring, false dilemma, bandwagon, and loaded language. So you will be reading up on these terms and seeking examples of them. But a logical fallacy is, they're extremely common, and they are extremely commonly directed at people who are not entirely educated to detect them, i.e. people who haven't taken a college philosophy class, which is a lot of people, unfortunately. Okay, so here we go. Logic textbooks typically provide lists of fallacies, common errors in reasoning that render an argument invalid. These include such things as the red herring. A red herring is an irrelevant point that distracts the audience from the real issue. It's kind of fun. Red herring is used to describe a logical fallacy because a red herring can be used on a hunt with dogs to distract the dogs from the scent. It's a way of actually testing hunting dogs. You have a scent of a rabbit or a fox or something, and there's a trail, and you have your dogs out to hunt the animal. And so you want to train your hounds in hunting, and you want to make sure that they're very, very good and that they are not easily fooled. So somebody goes out along the trail and takes a very, very stinky, fatty fish, a red herring, and runs it along the animal's trail. And so then the hunters come along, they're following the dogs, and the dogs are trying to catch the scent and trying to find the fox or the rabbit or whatever it is you're hunting. You want to see which of the dogs get distracted by the red herring and run in the wrong direction and don't find the rabbit, and which of the dogs is paying attention and says, okay, that's a stinky fish and that's not a rabbit, and I'm here to catch a rabbit. So those dogs will pursue the trail. And just like a good hunter, good hunting dog, we are supposed to not be distracted by that stinky fish. Okay, so yes, one of the logical fallacies is called a red herring because it gets in the way. It's a distraction. Ad hominem, attacking the character of an opponent. Bandwagon appeal is taking something that is a widely accepted idea as proof of its truth. But of course, as people who are studying rhetoric, we should perhaps quickly come to understand that just because lots of people think so, that doesn't mean it's true. Lots of people think the planet is only 6,000 years old. That doesn't mean that the planet is only 6,000 years old. You would need scientific data to draw that conclusion. Yes? Such lists go back to Aristotle. Okay, so there's some discussion here about these logical fallacies, and it's pretty cool, it's pretty interesting, and you'll want to learn them. And then your task is going to be to go over here to this link, Skeptical Science, and you can see here that our topic is global warming and climate change myths. So you will see that the myths are on the left side in red. They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they go down. How many are there? Well, more than 100. Lots. Okay. Lots and lots and lots of global warming myths, such as the climate has changed before. This is an argument that might suggest that the Industrial Revolution and all of the manufacturing that we're doing these days and all of the driving that we're doing these days and our expansive beef cattle industry that supports lots and lots of creatures that would never exist in nature, that belch pounds and pounds of methane every day. That none of that is causing global warming. No, rather this is just some sort of cyclic thing that happens, and so it's normal. Okay, so what you would do then to read this is click on the blue over here where it says climate reacts to whatever forces it to change at the time, and then that will allow you to see the climate myth, the climate's changed before, etc., and then you read below that, and then below that is the response to the myth. Greenhouse gases, mainly CO2, but also methane, were involved in most of the climate changes in Earth's past. When they were reduced, the global climate became colder. When they were increased, the global climate became warmer. When CO2 levels jumped rapidly, the global warming that resulted was highly disruptive and sometimes caused mass extinctions. Humans today are emitting prodigious quantities of CO2 at a rate faster than even the most destructive climate changes in Earth's past. Very simply, dinosaurs never built factories. Huh. Okay. All right, so you get the idea. You will go to this site, and I'll provide a link for you. And you just sort of rummage around in here and read several of these. Read the myth and read what science says. And then your task for the week is please review arguments from global warming skeptics and what the science really says. Browse 5 or more of the myths about the causes of global warming and the responses based on science. You're going to select 4 myths in which you are able to identify at least 4 different logical fallacies. So you don't want to pick 4 myths and then identify the same logical fallacy for all 4 of them. Rather, perhaps you can identify one myth as being sweeping generalization. Maybe another is faulty analogy. Maybe a third is post hoc ergo propter hoc. Maybe a fourth is non sequitur. Note that you will have to explain how the myth is or contains the logical fallacy you name. So find 4 different ones that you are comfortable with explaining. Complete your homework in a couple of paragraphs, 400 to 500 words. Explain at least 4 different logical fallacies and 4 different myths about climate change. Discuss each one at a time. Begin with the name of the climate change myth and how it is in error. Then explain the logical fallacy that the myth depends on. So you're not just going to give the correct response here. You're not simply going to correct the error. You're going to explain the myth. You're going to say how the myth has a logical fallacy. And then you're going to explain, then you're going to apply your understanding of the logical fallacy. Okay, and that is what we are doing this week. Good luck.